Welcome, I'm Darren, and I'll be your guide today as I look at 1998-99 Fleer Tradition basketball cards. Fleer in the mid-90s went through kind of an existential crisis. Through 1994, the card company had been pretty much kind of the same card company. They'd been evolving over time, but still there was a pretty good progression of Fleer cards, so that it all felt kind of like it was the same company. In 1995, they got a little carried away and kind of messed the whole thing up. And in 1996, they made a desperate move to kind of recover and rebuild the card brand and figure out where they were going to go. And 96 was kind of a desperate reach. It really didn't quite carry the way that it really should have for a future. So in 1997, they threw everything away and just essentially started over. And they used the Pacific model by making a full bleed card design and a card set that really unusually for Fleer had no subsets anywhere in the set. That was very unusual because in basketball they hadn't done that since 1987. Football, 1990, but Fleer had always had subsets, and obviously inserts were their big thing. And in 1997 they completely went away from that and went with just a straightforward card set and focused entirely on the special nature of the cards. Now the cards were cool. They were a matte finish with a very rough surface. They felt very unusual, which was really neat, and they had two parallels, so they had a three-tier system. All of that was great, but they still didn't quite have the interest in the card set. There was something missing from these cards, and they were going to need to figure that out moving forward. So 1998 was the year when they finally were able to put it together and create a card set for down the road. And what they did was they basically took the 97 card set and they made a glossy version of it. It's not that perfect, but that was the starting point that they made. So the 1998 cards were a glossy version of the previous year, still using gold foil for the text and the logo, but instead of using gold foil, they actually used a gold print that had a speckly quality to it, almost like what Skyboxes started out with in 1990. It's a neat effect when you get the light just right, but it's tough to get the light just right because when the spectral effect hits at the full height, it's when the card itself is getting bleached out by reflective light itself. So seeing the transition of the gold paint is a neat effect, but when it's really dark, it disappears. And if their intent was that the text basically disappears so you only see the image, mission accomplished. But it does make it really difficult to read the cards, it's kind of too bad. And the cards are really lacking in inspiration. It didn't have the energy of the 1997 card set. On the card back, it's almost like an ultra card back. It's interesting, and when you have an entire team set together, these look really cool. On their own, they're a little bit busy. But these cards were not intended to be the real driving point of the set. These cards were just it was almost like the filler for the special cards. And the special cards started off with the fact that they did once again have two parallels. So it's again a three-tier system. They carried that across from 1997 into 1998. And here in the 98 set, the whole idea of 1998 Fleer was, in their reinvention of basically the whole company, they wanted to bring back the people's awareness of the fact that this was the other old company. Everybody knew that Topps was the great old company in cards. But for all intents and purposes, Fleer was a strong number two, and it's really not that much younger than Topps. So Fleer wanted to bring that back, and in 1997, the parallel cards for that set were called Tradition. Crystal Tradition and Tiffany Tradition. And but those were the parallels. So for 1998, they used that for the whole brand. So 1998 Fleer was not Fleer, it was 1998 Fleer Tradition. And that spirit of tradition was integral to the brand that they really wanted to carry. And so the parallel was not recreations, but retro cards based on the classic 1961 Fleer set that Fleer had started out with long before their 1980s renaissance. Now, they'd only made one set prior to 1986, and 1961 was that set. So here we got the opportunity to see modern players in that exact same card style. The card style is white border and a color box up at the top with the team logo in it, and then colored text for the player name, and then a nearly square box down at the bottom with a shot of the player. Now, the shots came in two different forms. They came either as just a general shot of the player with a big color background behind, or they came as an action shot all in black and white. So those were the two ways that the cards came. In 1998, these cards were used as the inspiration for the modern cards, where everything was done the same way. Now, these cards are not glossy, but they're not a true matte. They're basically a non-glossy card, like we were used to in the late 80s and the early 90s. But the image was the same image that had been on the main card. It's just that here they took a nearly square version of it, put it in there, and did a sepia. Not black and white, but they did a sepia version of the image. But in some cases, they did do the colorized background around the player as well. So it was a tight shot of the player, but these were still the same action shots from the main card. So it's almost like what Skybox was doing, where Skybox had a couple of the magic of Skybox cards where they show you on the back the full image, and on the front they show you the Skyboxed version. They were kind of doing the same thing here, where you have the original color version of the card, and then you have a close-up of either the sepia version of that section or a colorized old-style design. Basically, that was the way that all of these cards were done. So every single card in the set was done this way. It starts off with the full bleed, and then it has this parallel that's all based on the 61 design. And they also use the same design as the actual 1961 cards completely. This actually does have a rough cardboard back, so this is very much like an 80s card. And you'll notice that down at the bottom it says Vintage 61. That is the name of the parallel. And it's interesting because the previous year it was Crystal Tradition or Tiffany Tradition. Here it's Vintage 61, or the higher tier one is Classic 61. Now, in the case of the Classic 61, it's the exact same card, except they glossied it up. They have, instead of black print for the name, it actually on the back it actually has silver foil, and it also has a serial number on the back out of 61. But the biggest difference is on the card front. They took the color box and the color text and they made it a holofoil. So the card has a very impressive quality to it. It was a pretty ambitious affair because you're basically taking an old style card, making a semi-old style version, and then you make a very, very, very modern version, which is a neat effect to have. So every card had these three tiers. But they also brought back the classic Fleer staple of a subset. In this case, it was Plus Factor. Now here they went with a Fleer insert card type of approach where they did a cutout shot of the player or maybe multiple players, and then they have just this wild, crazy background behind. That's about what they did. On the card back, it has something very similar, but these were done also as the main cards in the set with the parallels for 61, either vintage or classic. And so here in this case, you actually get to, when they did do the sepia image, you actually get to see the image that the picture on the regular card came out of. So it's almost like Skybox in reverse in a way. So really interesting how this parallel worked. And it made the card set really interesting in a very unique way. Now in the previous 2 years, they'd done their retro 86 and 87 cards. And so here they just went with a straight 61 card design. Interesting year to do it, but they did do that. And they did close the set out with a couple of checklists, and that is basically what they did for the main set. Other than that, it really just comes down to inserts. But some of these inserts are very impressive, starting off with Electrifying. And this is a card where you have, the basketball has like lightning bolts coming out of it. And it's an okay concept, but behind that is this gold speckly quality to the background, where it's little facets of gold foil that reflect at different times, making the whole back of the card lively and makes it rich and exciting and dynamic. Really, really impressive. But also it's a little bit embossed, and the embossing, interestingly, is not the player, it's actually the lightning bolts. So a really cool card, really cool concept. The way it came across is beautiful. Great way to start off your inserts. And then they have Great Expectations, and this is, I think it's better. I think that the Electrifying card is a very, very, very dynamic card, and I love the dynamism, but I love the refined quality of Great Expectations, where it has a leather print on the front. This is not a leather card. It's not playoff. This is a leather print on the surface of the card, and that whole leather surface, or the leather textured surface, is all a team color. And then they have a gold holofoil band around the outside and the text, and the way all of that reads is a wonderful, wonderful effect that's really, really neat. And it's a fun card to look at. And it is embossed, but it's embossed in two ways. All the leather printing is embossing, but also here for this card, the player himself is embossed. So these young players it's a great set for young up-and-coming players. They also did their Lucky 13, and this was a fun set that Fleer had been doing for a while. These were send-away cards, so you get the trade card, which has a number on it, and in this case, it's not as much fun as Lucky 13 cards from previous years. It's very bold, though. You definitely know what number you're getting. But the actual cards that you get back, the redeemed cards, these have a holofoil effect for the whole background. And since they have a really big upfront shot of the players, that is a perfect complement to the effect in the background, so that the two balance out to make not a beautiful rookie card, but a very strong and interesting rookie card for a very, very impressive rookie class. The rarest of the cards they saved for Playmakers. And Playmakers, I think it's kind of a letdown when you do a card as rare as this, because these are all serial numbered out of 100. So this is an insert that's actually serial numbered, which at this point was actually a very rare thing for any card company to do. This was their big one, and I wish that they had done it for a more interesting card. I say that simply because of the value component. On the flip side, I'm glad that the more interesting cards are actually easier to get than this. It's a good card, it's just, it could be a lot better. As a good example, we got Rookie Rising. And Rookie Rising was a hit and miss affair for Fleer over the years. Sometimes they had some really good designs, sometimes not so good. This one I like a lot. I really do. Now the design for it is basically, I think it's like an old TV set, I'm pretty sure, and then the wavy lines are reflecting that. But down at the bottom they have what looks more like a CD player or a DVD player. I don't remember handheld DVD players, portable DVD players, that kind of like the model that you would be looking at here. So it looks like it's a stylized version of a TV and a DVD player, or a CD player really, when you look at the buttons. But whatever the combination is, they have a great effect of the holofoil, where they have the wavy lines behind the player, kind of like the TV's not quite in focus, and then the buttons down at the bottom have a holofoil on top of that, which makes the whole thing very, very vibrant and strong. And the buttons really kind of take over over the player, which I don't mind. For this card, I think it does look really cool. But the last insert set is kind of a letdown from the group, because it looks more like an insert or a subset card from, say, 1996. It's not a very good one. It's just kind of there. It's Timeless Memories. And the card itself isn't really a timeless memory. It's just kind of there. But they did have some really, really good inserts through this set. So that was a lot of fun. But this set was all about finding a new path forward. And they wanted to reinvent Fleer to bring back the idea of this is a long-standing traditional card company. And they would at times bring this back in various ways. We would see it with Platinum, and we would see it with the 2000 set. And here in 1998, this was the first year where they were trying to basically infuse the tradition into the main card set. The 97 card set was a little bit stronger in terms of the card stock, but 1998, with this parallel set, this was a really good effort that I wish that they'd continued down the road. And that's kind of the only flaw that I have with this. The base cards are kind of boring, but the parallels are a lot of fun. I wish they were a little bit easier to collect, because right now the classics are a little bit expensive. Well, they're a lot of bit expensive, but still, at least the mid-tier parallel is pretty accessible, and it is an interesting concept, and I like the way the cards came out. So that was the year when Fleer tried to basically go back to becoming almost a retro card. They did a lot of retro with this, but the inserts were really strong, and it would be a path forward through 1999. Not through 2000, but I'll look at 1999 in another video. So other than that, I'm going to close this out now. Definitely subscribe if you haven't done so already. Check out my other videos, and yeah, thank you very much for watching.